Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Multiverse machine. This episode is going to be slightly different, as it's not going to be a main progression episode. It's just going to be a little offshoot to explain a core mechanic. I'm going to call these bonus episodes, and there will be a few of them throughout the series, as I just kind of test different mechanics that I want to share with you. This will be a way that I can, share the mechanic and then go build it in the world off camera, so going through time. Um, but without further ado, this is bonus episode 1, and we're going to be focusing on extreme reactors. Um, so let's go ahead and hop into the crafting dimension here. I've set up a few examples. Um, so this is the smallest and most basic reactor, of course. It's just got some casings, it's got one fuel rod, it's got some stuff in there, and it'll generate 117 FE per tick. Now, the way that these work is at least for passive generation, I've not done anything with actively cooled turbines. These are all just passive generation reactors. They generate energy directly based on casing heat. So the idea of the mod is that you've got these fuel rods which have your fuel. It's a nuclear reaction. It generates radiation, which produces heat, which heats up the casing. The heat of the casing produces the energy. So you've got your fuel, you've got your core heat, which is the heat produced by the fuel rod, or heat of the fuel. Then the higher this is, the faster the fuel burns up. Then you've got your casing heat, which the higher this is, the faster you produce energy. And of course your internal energy buffer. And then here you've also got core heat, fuel burnup rate, fuel reactivity, and energy output. Reactivity, best I can figure is the higher this is, the slower the fuel burns. But I couldn't find confirmation of that in the in-game documentation, and I haven't done a lot of outside research on this. Just the testing here. So this is your most basic controller, or your most basic reactor. And then here I've got a couple different designs to test how moderators work. So moderators are blocks that essentially transfer heat from the rod to the casing. So here's our most basic moderator, which is air. And you can see it's producing 363 FE per tick, and it's burning up 0.055 fuel per tick. You've also got a 68 reactivity. You've got a high core heat and a low casing heat. What this is telling you is that you've got a lot of heat in the core, but not much of it is making to the casing, which means this is very inefficient. A lot of your efficiency is going to be bringing these two levels close to each other, because the closer they are, the better the heat is transferring from the rod to the casing. And I don't actually know if it's possible to get this one lower than this one. Here we've got completely surrounded by iron blocks. And you'll see the core heat is much, much lower because more of it's being transferred to the casing. Now, because there's only one rod, it's not producing a ton of heat. But you'll notice we jumped from 360 to 640 FE per tick. And we're actually using slightly less fuel, slightly more fuel actually, but not enough to be noticeable. But we have we would double the output. Here I've done just on the faces of the rod, and you'll see that we still have around 640 low core heat, low casing heat, or close together casing heat. And here I've done not the faces but the corners, and you'll notice that it's dramatically lower this time. It's only 370. Actually, it's only a little better than if everything was air. So the corners do take some heat, but most of the heat from each rod is lost through its faces. And what that tells you is that if you've got situations where rods are touching each other, those faces are not actively producing or actively transferring heat outwards. So the next thought that you might have is, well, why don't we just do a checkerboard pattern? This is, the most common. It's easy. It maximizes the amount of faces that touch moderators, and that's true. Now we've got a lot more rods here, so you're going to start seeing higher levels in here. If we just have a basic checkerboard pattern, you've got 3.4 thousand RF per tick, and you're burning up a tenth of a millibucket per tick. However, if you come over here to a fully surrounded one, you've got 3.4 and 4.2, 0.17 millibuckets per tick. But notice that we're using 5 rods there compared to 8 rods here. So in this case, with basic reactors, and this is the max size that a basic level can do, you want to go with the checkerboard pattern, because in this case, it is much more efficient. You're using less fuel for just a little bit less energy production. I've also tried a reverse checkerboard here with fewer rods and more moderators, and you've got 2.9, so about 3, and here you've got 3.4, but you're using one entire less rod. So here you're burning 0.08 millibuckets per tick of fuel, and here you're burning 0.10. So it seems like it's up to preference, and I haven't done the math. You can do the math on your own if you want to figure out fuel burn-up rate per rod or energy production per rod. But you can do those own experiments at home, but at least for this size, where you can't get anything on the outside of a ring like this, checkerboard is the way to go. I did also build some reinforced ones so we could explore situations like this, where you can entirely surround the outside and the inside if you want, with moderators. So we'll check this, and remember we are using 8 rods here. So now we're burning 0.14, and we're making 5.3. We've got a bit of a gap here. And this is, note, with air in the middle. So we're burning 0.14 and making 5.3. And this is the same thing, just with iron in the middle. And we are burning 0.14 and making 5.5. So we're making a little bit more energy, and I think that it's actually just barely slightly less fuel per tick. So putting that moderator in there both saves fuel and produces more energy just by being in there, because what it's doing, remember, air is a terrible moderator. It's taking the heat off these faces and transferring it to the top and bottom casing. But now let's look at the checkerboard pattern, because again, remember over here, checkerboard was more efficient than ring. But in this case, you've got 8 rods producing 5.5, and here you've got 13 rods producing just under 8. But check the fuel burn-up rate. You're burning 0.24 per tick, and here you're burning 0.14 per tick. That's nearly half. So in this case, using only 8 rods, or using more rods, gives you a negligible increase and uses significantly more fuel. And what's happening is, as far as I can tell, it has to do with whether or not the moderators actually touch the casing, or how much the moderator touches the casing. So in this case, these moderators have a rod on one side and a casing on the other, and that's allowing heat to transfer. But here you've got these moderators, and the only way they can transfer is up and down. You've got 3, so for, say, this column, there are 3 rods in each column. So this column of iron block is receiving 12 faces of heat, but it's only got 2 faces of output. Whereas this one is receiving 3 faces of heat, and it's got 3 faces of output plus 6 faces touching more moderators. 8 faces, because you got the top and the bottom, and then 6 more on moderators. So as far as I can tell, that has something to do with it. So your design is generally probably going to be better looking like this for bigger reactors than for this. That's just design. Material is also a big important play in this. And there are a lot of materials in that can be used as moderators. A lot of different ones from different mods. This mod pack is set up so that actually not all of them can be used. So like you can't use the thermal blocks. So your options really are liquids and vanilla blocks. But I just figured I'd make the same reactor, one rod, all the way surrounded by moderators. Iron produces 819, gold 846, diamond is 872, and notice that the burn up rate is identical in all of these. So you're burning the same amount of fuel, but you're producing more and more with each tier of item, and this is blocks of netherite. Very impractical. I feel like for the increase, here you've got 913, whereas iron is 815. So less than 100 FE per tick increase for the ridiculous price of netherite. But it really shines when you start looking at liquids. I know ice is not technically a liquid, and I did jump to blue ice, which is the highest tier. You got 575 for blue ice. You've got 582 for water. So water is actually better than ice. Liquid starlight, though, is where it's at, because then you've got 1000 FE per tick for just some liquid starlight. That's even better than the netherite. So in our playthrough, I think I'm actually going to go with the liquid starlight. And I'll likely end up building something like this to start out. I'll upgrade to something like this. It'll take a while, but there it is. So this has been Extreme Reactors, bonus episode 1. I'll see you in the main series.